there we go. Wing sections are on and drying in. To be honest, they're not brilliant fit. They're pretty crude, but they're going to blend in quite well. We're going to wait till they're totally dry as a whole before we do any sanding and filling and all things like that. Just wanted to show you that nice cockpit detail. As you can see, the wash just brings it to life. At the end of the day, that's all its purpose is. It's just to highlight low lights, things like that, and just to give it a little bit more depth. So hopefully, as you can see, it turned out really nicely. Very impressed with it, and as you can see, it just really pops the detail. And the same goes for the internals as well. As you can see, those are really looking nice. No problem with those at all. Okay, so now we can think about actually getting it all together. So once we've got these two sections in, to be honest, you can pop a couple of decals and some details. No one's going to see it in a million years, so I'm not going to worry about it. So again, we're just going to test fit the two halves together. We don't look too bad. Usual thing though, I think we're going to find, yeah, bit of much of a thing on these. Whoops, we didn't want to do that. Okay, but we needed to clean that area, so let's just re-glue that guy down. You might be able to get it in afterwards, I'm not sure. Okay, but we'll come in, a bit more glue. And this one, seating it, make sure you push it in and it goes down against that bottom bar. If it doesn't, you're going to have a few problems. So I'm just going to check the other. Yeah, we got another one down here. To be honest, it's just bad moulding. It's cheap moulding. The others seem to be okay. Perhaps this one needs a little bit of a cleaner, but without it, it just causes problem. The other thing as well, you notice sometimes the actual pins just a little bit long. So I'm just going to trim that one back. That one doesn't look too bad, if I'm honest, but that other one looks definitely a bit too long. All right, and just check your ejector pin marks to make sure they're clean. So these two halves now can go together as well. Okay. And to be honest, because it's hollow underneath, it's a bit of a trouble getting hold of it. So actually what you can do, use the slightly thicker glue if you've got it. If you've got the thin, doesn't make any difference, but you can come along and just capillary action it. So you put a bit of a drop down there, then just run it along the entire seam, okay, and then just double it up. If you can glue this way, I would always recommend doing it this way. You end up with a far nicer, cleaner join. And the great thing is when you come to things like sanding and stuff like that, you never need filler because it's such a large, solid lump. Okay, so we're going to use the thinner stuff around the rear, just up around here, and then obviously on these, the actual tail system itself, just to knock it together. Then we can give it a bit of a squeeze, and I just use this technique of sort of rubbing it between your fingers, and that way it bites, grabs it, and then that's it, you know you're good to go. We're going to go along extra thin on the top, but you can see how clean that join is if you didn't want to go that way. But down here again, we're just going to use a slightly thicker glue, and that's why I use a thin brush, because these pots, when they're full up, they actually drip everywhere. We've got to drip, let it dry, peel it off. If you rub it now, it'll take the paint clean off your mat. Okay, but that's why I prefer half a pot, and what I might do is end up decanting some of this out. So we're just going to go around both sides. Happy with how all that is gluing. All right, but you can see it's a big old open system like this. All right, so very nicely done. But you can see what I mean about not getting a great deal of detail down on the inside. All right, now that won't take long to go off, and then technically what's going to happen, I'm going to trust it. This is just going to sit right on top. Okay, so it's just going to come in. So you're just making sure you've got both the framework in from the outside. And I know I'm testing my luck a little bit. Just make sure this bulkhead is in front. Okay, there's a little groove for it to go in. Okay, and there we go. It should, hopefully, as I say, I'm pushing my luck a little bit because this is all still wet, but I'm just hoping it's going to fit in. Now, it's got to fit just down on the inside of these, and it goes in, and I have to say, well done Airfix, that's actually quite a nice job. Now, how much of that detail can we see? Pretty much nothing, but hey ho, we know it's in there, don't we? Alright, so there we go, that's in there. It's a good, nice, solid fit, so we're going to come along extra thin, and we're going to do a lot of touch and flow just to go along, just to put this all together. Alright, then the bottom, you're just going to have to pull it up just a little bit. So if you have got a clamp, you could obviously use a rubber band or anything else like that. We're just going to come in, a little bit of pressure, not tons, okay, just to hold that in, and then obviously exactly the same on the other side. You could use the slightly thicker glue if you wanted to, but to be honest, we're pretty good. Let the capillary action do all the work, let it go down, take it all down there. Okay, and that is on there. All right, so we're going to let that dry just for a moment. Okay, so having a quick look at the instructions and running through, obviously this is what we've done. We put that bulkhead in. This is talking about those decal placements. Again, we didn't worry. And then dropping straight down on the top. And the next stage is really getting the tail in the front in, but I would wait literally around about half an hour or so for that to go off, okay, because you don't want to end up pushing it forward, nudging it and all the rest of it. So let those dry and then come in. We can put those in. We can put the control surfaces on now if you want to, and certainly down the back here we can put the tail on now and we can get those areas in. I've already done things like down here. We've already started on this bit for doing the actual cooler underneath for the radiator and for the oil cooler on the front as well. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could start to think about getting those areas all in before we move further down, okay, and start getting on with the undercarriage. And then when we're doing the undercarriage, we can come back to do any sanding, filling and all those little jobs on there like that. The one thing I have spotted, okay, which I didn't mention earlier, which is a bit of a pain, is this guy. Okay, now hopefully you can see this. This is a massive sink mark that's gone all the way through. That needs to be taken care of. But to be honest, I'm going to let it get together, get it as a whole, okay, and then we can actually think about filling and doing all those areas. Touch wood, the actual kit's fine. I don't think we're going to need any filler apart from things like sink marks. You've actually got two types of tail system that go underneath. Obviously you've got the one which has got the actual arrestor hook for the naval version of the Hurricane, which obviously is a separate kit. So what I'm going to do, clean up these parts, let that dry for around about half an hour. I'm going to put the control surfaces on. Obviously you can put them angles, things like that. The tail going on, because to be honest that's a straightforward job. I've already done them here. Just two parts glued together. Again, you've got a bit of a seam running between both of them, so let them take up. Get the tail, the rudder in and everything else. But for the moment we just want that centre section to dry and get the other bits on. So I'm going to do those. Okay, so we're moving along very nicely. A couple of things I want to point out. Sanded it right the way over. We gave it a bit of time. Obviously we used the scrapers and then we've sanded and taken care of all the seams. No problem with those at all, okay? A little bit of a step on the front one. So instead of messing around with all the fillers and stuff like that, I've actually just sanded and blended it all in. I thought that was just an easier way to go. Generally we've popped around, re-scribed everything. When you're doing the leading edge of these wings, I use this little tool. This is the UMM scriber, sorry, stroke chisel thing. Okay, and then literally if you put the blade in, walk it round, do a couple of passes, you can actually put the panel lines quite easily, because you can run it over and then you just come from both sides and pop round it. A couple of little ones we popped in, as I say, we popped in the ones down the back here and everything else, and generally I must admit went together no problem at all. All the seam issues, you know, they're just the general ones you need to do with this type of kit. You know, Airfix, although they're getting there and the kits are far better than used to be, unfortunately seam joins are always going to be a little bit fiddly. But if you take your time and allow the filler to dry and things like that, there's no problem. I use the Styrene Filler, which is the one we speak about on the site a lot, just for these bigger gaps, this big one down the back as well, and it goes in beautifully. If you give it a bit of time to dry, it sounds just like plastic. But just generally the wing joins and that, especially on the trailing edges here, they weren't particularly nice. Okay, so that's all in there. You might have noticed we popped a little bit of black just around the actual cockpit area. This is so we can get the glass work in. Okay, so we've already masked up and done the front one just our standard way. We've just done it with the old Tamiya tape and popped that in. So we're just going to have a test fit, make sure it's going to sit in very nice. Now there is a little groove which is actually really helpful because it just makes this sit in, okay, and gives us a very nice fit generally. Okay, now it is quite clunky. Don't think it sits in there all flush and beautiful. It is a little bit lumpy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to glue it into place if I can find my PVA. Okay, so we're just going to come in, drop of PVA glue. We're not going to need gallons, so the usual thing, we're just going to brush a bit on the front and the edge. You want a little bit more than you really need because you're allowing for it to squish in a bit and everything else. And as I say, this one's a little bit different the way it goes in because it's going to push in this slot, so you just need it all to go in. Okay, and that is as simple as that. So we're just going to let that bite just a little bit. Okay, it just sort of sits in there. That's the weird thing with this one. Okay, so we're just going to let that bite for about sort of 2 or 3 minutes. As soon as it's got to bite, we're going to come in with a cotton bud to clean up the edges around it, but we need it to get a bit of grip, because otherwise if you put the cotton bud too early, you're just going to wipe the glue out of the joint and everything else like that. Now, the canopy system for the main one, you get 2. Okay, so we've got 2 here. So you've actually got E2 and E7. E7 is for the open position. We're going to have ours in the open position. So what we can actually use is E2, either as a backup in case you crack one or make a mess, or just for spraying purposes. So this one will actually, when that's dry, fit in the top and we can just spray over it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a little technique about spraying over with acrylics and then a cleanup job, which is very old school, which you can do when they've got a little bit of an edge to them. This hasn't got a matte edge to it, okay, to be honest. And then what I'm going to show you afterwards is doing this one as a separate piece if you're not very good at masking. Okay, so I'm going to spray it as a separate once it's all completed and put together, and I'm going to show you about doing it in bars instead of doing all the squares and putting them all in, spraying it the whole. I'm going to show you about spraying it separately in bars, so you just do an entire wrap, and then the other way, and it's sometimes a quicker way if you've got something big, but certainly it's a far easier way. So if you ever have trouble doing those little squares and cutting them all out and all the rest of it, then stay tuned and I'll show you about that one once we're into the paint stage and we've got the paint flowing. So basically, once this is dried, we're just going to give it a wipe around to clean it up, then we'll be good to go. We're going to mask up underneath here with this silver work, because obviously, you know, we have painted it, we don't want to lose the lot straight away, okay? And then what we can do is do a lot of the work by hand afterwards once we're in there. Once that's done, that's on, canopy's in and everything else, we can get it over to the spray bay and we'll go over there and get some primer on it. Okay, so over in the spray bay, we're just putting the last bits in. This is just that foam that you get with various kits for aftermarket things. All you got to do is make sure it's pushed down so it doesn't overhang, otherwise you're going to obviously interfere with the edge around there. Okay, so a little bit of a problem here. This front windscreen doesn't want to sit particularly well, so what I'm going to do it as a loose fit, and then we'll come back and have a go at it. In fact, I don't know if that's actually going to stay there particularly well. The glue just doesn't, there's not enough area for it to physically bite onto. That's the trouble. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put the primer coat down, then I'm going to try and reseat it just a little bit to see if we can get that in a little bit better. So we've got here a little bit of tack. Literally, you're only going to need a smidgen, and then what we're going to do is wrap it around the back end. Okay, so when we say a tiny bit, we really mean it on this one. So we're just going to pop it literally just around here. Okay, so that clear one, which this is the closed one, which we're not going to use, will then hold it all in place like that. Okay, so what we're going to do, come in with our primer. So for our primer, fire up that. All we're going to use is XF19. I've got in here, this is X20A Tamiya thinners. It's just in a different bottle to make it easier for spraying it. So usual thing with the primer, really, its sole purpose is to give a texture for your next paint coats to go onto, but also it's designed really for checking all your seams and gaps and everything else like that. Okay, so we're just going to put around about a 50-50 mix just down in here. Okay, generous amount. Pop the lid on that, give it a good old mix. Make sure you mix it really, really well. Okay, and then get rid of that. Go in there. Okay, we're just going to check our flow. Okay, that's looking good. All right, so what we're going to do is just going to put down a little dusty coat, and then we can build up. But this is going to go absolutely everywhere, so we can check the seams. So I'm going to just do this area here. One of the ones I was worried about was this rear seam, the way it comes up from the bottom to the top, and actually I think I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so that one's all right, and then obviously we're just going to do the wings all around, not doing that. Okay, let's just hit the old extractor. Dropping paint everywhere. Just grab a towel. Okay, because the thing is, it's got down to the business end now. This is the trouble when you get a bit carried away. Okay, so we just clean that off. Alright, try that again. Okay, nice, generous, thick coat. And make sure you do your leading edges and your trailing edges. all the directions. Okay, so I'm happy about that rear join. That was always going to be a worry, and these side ones. Okay, so now we've got to do the rear spine to check. Across the tails, the tail planes, the wings, the wing roots. Okay, leading edges of the wings, trailing edges of the wings. And because the wing is so thick on the Hurricane, you want to make sure that they're okay as well. All right, don't just sort of pass it by. So I'm pretty happy with all that is, apart from I've got nowhere to grab it. Okay, so I'll just get hold of the nose. Actually, that nose looks pretty good. I was a bit worried about that as well. And on the front, just about got it all down there. All right, so happy with all of that. What we're going to do, let that dry. I might even speed it up with the hair dryer just so we can get on with this. Okay. Stick my finger in the light. So there we go, that's pretty well done. Nice smooth texture right the way over, and happy with all the seams, no problem at all. The leading edge of the wings I was a little bit worried about because they were quite lumpy and bumpy, but hopefully you can see they're okay. Trailing edges are all good. The wing roots where they join the actual aircraft itself, again, they seem to all be okay. Very happy with those. So actually that's pretty nice, apart from reseating the actual front windscreen, which once this is dry I'll have a go at. Okay, we're actually pretty good, and we can go straight in there then with the main colours of paint. Right, okay, so as you can see, we've got this done nicely. A bit of black on the front. I've reseated it, and to be honest, I've just normally glued it with a Tamiya extra thin right the way around it just to speed it up. We've also gone along and I've rechecked this front seam, and to be honest, when I was leaning it up against the actual spray booth, the fibres scratched it a little bit, so we've taken care of that. I've also done down the back of the rear bulkhead, the armor plate, a little bit of black down there just so it shows through from the glass side when it's going to be in the closed or open position, because otherwise with the camo wraparound it's not going to be there. Okay, so really happy, very smooth paintwork job on there, so no problem at all. the scribing's good, everything else seems to lead itself very, very nicely. So what we can actually do now is think about getting paint on. So we're going to have our standard sort of RAF early World War II fighter colour, which is RAF Sky, okay, and then we've got the dark green and dark earth. Now for this particular one I'm going to use some paints I haven't used before on this. We're going to actually use AK Interactive's Air series of paints. Now as I said, I haven't used these before, or not this particular ones here, okay, on this one, so it'd be interesting to see how these go down. They look extremely like Model Air, but it does say new formula and all the rest of it, so I'm thinking it's a little bit different, but actually the colours look, just through the plastic, pretty good. So I'm quite interested to see how these are going to go down. Now this particular one, we're not going to mess around with pre-shading, we're going to post-shade it afterwards, okay, and do something a little bit different with this particular build. Alright, so what we're going to be doing, obviously it's all the underside on this one, we don't have to worry about masking it up. This is the Model Air series, so technically it is of straight out of the bottle, although you can actually thin it. It does say recommended with their own thinners, okay. But what I'm going to do is, just to help this thing along a little bit, I'm actually just going to, got a bit of black left over down here, so we're just going to get rid of that. I'm just going to do a quick colour change just down here. Okay, so what we're going to do is literally just get rid of that black that's down in here, and they're just out of shot. I've got my dump pot, so we're just going to dump that colour. Okay, tiny bit more in there, and then dump that. Okay, nice clean thinners coming out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a few drops just in the bottom there. This is just to liven this up and help it flow a little bit better, if you like. Now these were brand new, and to be honest they had separated massively to the point where this actually looked blue in the bottle. I thought it was the wrong one, but it actually is because it was just all sunk. So it's had a good shake, but I would recommend giving these a good old shake before you come in here and try this. Okay, so we're going to pop around about half a colour cup down in there. So in mil perspective, we're probably around about 2 mil. Alright, okay, now this has curdled in Tamiya thinners. Now we say curdled, it's just gone a little bit lumpy. So what I'm going to do is rub it to 1 inch of its life and just see what happens. Now I've never known it to Actually, I think we're going to be alright. Just didn't like that initial reaction between the two. Sometimes what can happen is if you put the thinner in and it doesn't like it, it can actually go lumpy. But we seem alright. Sometimes it thickens it up. We're going to see what happens. Because we haven't got any pre-shading or anything down here, we don't have to thin it. Now, if you have pre-shading down here, you want to make this mix a little bit thinner, so obviously it doesn't come through. From our point of view, we're quite happy just to throw this down and see what we get, okay? So we're just going to start at the back. Okay. And it's spitting like crazy. So we're thinking it doesn't like the thinners, which I have never known anything that doesn't like Tamiya X20A. Alright, so I'm going to dump it. And you might notice down on here it's really, really thick. And it hates that thinners. And what it is, it's actually reacting to it. So I'm going to flood this entire thing. We're just going to put loads in here. I'll show you with you so you can see. Loads of thinners and over thin, because don't forget, even if it goes thin, you can still do it. And look, this is actually really, really thick, okay? So I'm assuming this is our problem, is that it doesn't like that thinners. Now, fear not, we have plan B and C with this, okay? So we're just gonna lose all of that. Now, what I'm thinking then is that it is a true, actual acrylic. True acrylics don't like synthetic acrylics, and technically Tamiya X20A is a synthetic acrylic, okay? And when we say synthetic, we mean it's sort of that man-made type, okay, which is more alcohol based than it is actual water based. Alright, so I'm just going to put that safely out of the way. Now we're going to try and blow this through and just flush it through. Okay, so we're just flushing it through. Okay, seems to be coming through okay. Alright, so we're just going to wipe around everything. I'm just going to keep pumping that trigger in case you've got any trace material left over. So basically you want to dump half a colour cup through just to make sure it's all out. Okay, so that's all pretty good. Okay, plan B, we're going to try Airbrush Cleaner. Now I know what you're thinking. Trust me on this one. Now the Airbrush Cleaner we're just going to put in here for a minute and wipe it all around the outsides of the colour cup so everything's coated, so we've got no trace of the other one in here. So we're just going to blow that through. Okay, so this is the Vallejo Airbrush Cleaner that I've used for donkey's years. Okay, and we're going to reset and try that again. And we're going to see what happens. Okay, so we're just going to pop this down in here. And immediately, I don't know how well the camera can actually pick this up. If I just bring you guys down, you might see it's bubbling. Okay, which is not a brilliant thing, but it's not a bad thing. But you might actually see it's actually like a cauldron in there. Okay, well you can actually see it bubbling away, but it's quite weird. Okay, now that's not an air leak, that's actually just the mixture mixing together. So we're going to give it a rub around. Alright, now we're just going to check our flow. Now that seems a lot better. Okay, so what we're going to do, we just get that camera pulled out again. Sorry, I have to do this manually today. Okay, so what we're going to do is literally going to come along and try that again. Voila, perfect. Beautifully smooth. Covers very well. And this is Airbrush Cleaner, folks. And I know a lot of you now are going to be chatting at the screen saying, yeah, I use Airbrush Cleaner all the time, works for me. I know, I was just, you know. Okay, now we're getting a bit smoky in here and I don't want to get a lung full, so I'm going to hit the extractor and we're just going to put this over. So a nice heavy coat. So there we go, that's our first coat on there just like that. So what I'm going to try is I'm just going to hit it with a hairdryer, as we've got loads of noise going on anywhere, and we just have a general look together, see what we got. Okay, so there we go. Actually, I have to say, probably needs another coat if I'm honest, but that worked really, really well. No problems at all with that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to give it another little light coat around the front. See, we're out of paint there. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try it neat and just see what it does neat. Okay, if it goes all wrong, then, well, we'll have to start again. Alright, so this is trying it neat. See, straight away, it's clogged the airbrush. I've got nothing coming out here at all, and that's trying to spray this neat. Alright, so what we're going to do, come back in with our bit of thinner airbrush cleaner. So this stuff, you can't spray neat, it just bungs up and everything else, which is very similar to the new Japanesey type stuff. Is it Higata stuff or whatever it's called? It doesn't like it either. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I'm just going to clean it around the needle. Straight away, just pumping the needle, encouraging it out, literally. Okay, and there we go, we're back in business again. Alright, so then what we're going to do is just going to come down, put down another coat. This is a lot thicker, this one. Okay, just down on the nose. Okay, drying down between the coats, just building it up slowly. Now, okay, if you're asking me if this is better than Tamiya, I would say no. Is it as easy to use as Model Air? No. Do I like it? I don't know yet. I'll reserve judgment on this one. But yeah, I must admit, we used it on the Heinkel Bomber. It's a different paint, but it's from the same series, and I had no problem with it at all. This, I must admit, doesn't seem to like it at all, and I don't understand why, if I'm honest. Okay, just building it up. We're going to stick with it. We're going to use this and see how we go with it. But I must admit, I'm not massively a fan of it up so far. So what I'm going to do, finish this off, a couple more little coats around the front end to get it all going. Okay, what we're going to do then is let that dry for around about sort of half an hour, and then we get it masked up and get on with camo.